guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Suzanne and this channel is called The Magic of Music. This channel is going to be about teacher tricks, tips, and ideas, particularly for the music classroom. So if you're interested in that, be sure to subscribe below. Before I get started, I do want to talk about the sound. I did purchase an external mic for this video. However, trust me when I say the sound is much worse when I use it. So please be kind to me. I'm very new at this. I'm trying my best and I will look further into fixing the sound. So let's get started. I thought for my first video, the best thing I could do was for my viewers to get to know me as a teacher a little bit. Why should you listen to my tricks, tips, and ideas? So I found this teacher tag, which was created by a channel called Too Cool for Middle School. I think I'm a little bit late on this tag, but it had some really good questions that I thought would help my viewers get to know me a little bit better. So there are 10 questions. I am going to be reading them off of my iPad here, and I'll answer each one. So here we go. Number 1. Did you always know you wanted to be a teacher? If not, when did you decide to become a teacher? Okay, so I did not always know I wanted to be a teacher, although from a young age I did have several adults tell me that I appeared to be good with children. However, initially I think I wanted my career to be somewhere in the performing arts space. I remember when I was very young, think late elementary school, early middle school, I wanted to be an actress. Then after a while, I changed my mind. I wanted to be a writer because I really enjoyed writing and I was pretty good at it. And then once I hit high school, that's when I got inspired to become a teacher. And it was actually another teacher who inspired me. I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but I think a lot of us get inspired to go into teaching because of another teacher who had an impact on us. Next question. Number 2, what was your major in college? Okay, so my major in college was music education with a concentration in flute and eventually also voice. I did a combined concentration. However, when I did go into college, I did not come in as a music education major. I actually came in undecided. And that's because I really had music ed in the back of my head, but I was a little bit unsure of if I'd be able to pass the college audition because I kind of got serious about my instrument a little bit later in life. I think when I was around a sophomore or a junior. Instead, I came in undecided and I decided to go to a school called Kean University, which was renowned for its teaching program. So I went in thinking, I want to do music ed, but I was also open to other subject areas. So I also looked into special education as well as English education. And for about a semester, I did my GE classes, the general education ones, and I also played in the wind ensemble. And I got to know the students in the department as well as the professors. And then one night I talked to the wind ensemble director and I asked him, you think I could audition for this program? And he highly encouraged me to do so. So I did, and the rest is history. All right, let's go on to the next question. Number 3, what kinds of requirements does your state have for teachers? Did you have to do observation hours, student teaching, etc.? So I'm from the state of New Jersey, and the short answer is yes, I had to do all of it and then a little bit more. So I did have to do observations as early as I think my sophomore year, where I would go into a classroom, I'd watch what the teacher was doing, and then I'd write a paper. By my junior year, I was going in 1 day a week, and I was doing kind of a mix of observation and instruction under the guidance of my university supervisor and my cooperating teacher at the time. For my senior year, that's when I did my student teaching internship, and it was a split internship, so I had 7 weeks where I was doing general music K through 5 and 7 weeks where I was doing middle school band. And I was pretty much instructing the majority of the time with the guidance of each of those cooperating teachers. Now, that's not the only thing I had to do to become a music teacher. I also had to do what we call a senior recital, which is a performance. I believe it had to be an hour long. And for me, I had to do it on flute and voice because I had that combined concentration. I had to test off on various instruments. I think I had to test off on 10 of them. And then I also had to take an exam called the Praxis, which was just the New Jersey exam for getting your teaching license. So there was the general education one. I think it was English, math, and maybe I had to take a science one. I don't know. And then I also took the music Praxis, which was for my content area. I had to get a specific score on it to get my, not my provisional license, my certificate of eligibility to become a teacher. So I had to do all of those things, and finally, and if you went to my college, you'll know what I'm talking about, I had to write this big, giant paper, and it was called the Teacher Work Sample. We also sometimes called it the TWS. And this was a giant paper about teaching methods, teaching data, your philosophy of teaching. It was a big paper. Mine wound up being, I think, 120 pages, possibly more. And I actually had to write this paper twice because I had to write a version of it for my junior year as well as a version of it for student teaching. So very stressful time. Got through it with lots of Red Bull. Okay, so that's how I. Those were the requirements. All right, number 4. How did you decide which age group or subject you wanted to teach? So, as I mentioned before, I was inspired by another teacher. This teacher was a high school band director who, when I first met her, she actually seemed a little bit strict. She had very high expectations of her students, and I think I was even a little bit afraid of her when I met her. But as I got to know her and I got more serious about my playing and my instrument, it turned out that she was just one of those teachers that just really wanted her students to succeed. And she really had a big impact on me. She really took the time to help me become a better musician and a better person. And she was that influence I needed in my life at that time. So that had an impact on me. And after a year or so of being in her class and working with her, I started to look at what she was doing every day and started to think about it and realized that her job must be so cool because she gets to see students over multiple years develop. And then I started to think about my past music teachers. So I had one that was still teaching me in high school that had been teaching me since the 6th grade. And I realized, wow, I'm so different from a 6th grader to where I am now. And it must be really cool for the teachers to see that. So that's what kind of got the wheels turning for me and got me thinking in this direction. And yeah, I made it. I'm very happy because teaching was my dream job, definitely. Number 5, did you do any substitute teaching? Okay, yes and no. So let me explain. I did not get a substitute license in the state of New Jersey, but I still wound up having to substitute teach in some capacity. The first experience actually happened while I was in my senior internship of student teaching. So one of my cooperating teachers said to me in kind of a joking way, and I feel like I'm getting sick, I'm not going to be here tomorrow. And so that meant he wanted me to run the class for the next day. And because I did not have a substitute license and I did not have a teaching license, they did have to bring in a sub to supervise what I was doing. However, the substitute just kind of sat there while I ran the class. I did not get paid, but it was a valuable experience, and it went very smoothly because at that point it was with the kids I had been working with over the past 6 or 7 weeks. They knew my style, they knew what I expected of them, so it was a positive experience. The second example that I'm thinking of actually is after I got my standard license as a teacher, and it actually has happened in my current district. And I guess when this situation came up, it's come up a few times where my school has been a little bit understaffed, or there's a shortage of subs. So what will happen when the school does not have enough subs is sometimes, just in order to get coverage, they will pull from special areas. So I know myself, the art teacher who worked in my building, as well as the media teacher, probably the Spanish teacher, all of the special areas, we've all been pulled at least once or twice. I think I may have been pulled a total of 5 times, where I've either had to cover a class for a couple of periods or cover for the full day, just depending on what the school needs. It is kind of a bummer because then they have to cancel my classes for however long they need me for, and I'd much rather be in the music classroom. But of course, when you work in a building, you want to be helpful and you want to be where you're needed. So I was happy to help. It wasn't a big deal. I can say I am not the best at helping my students with their math assignments. I'm much more suited to being a music teacher, but that's what it is like in reality. Sometimes you just have to, help where you're needed. Number 6, what was the process like to apply for the first teaching job you were hired for? Okay, so I graduated from Kean University in the spring, so the jobs were not out there right away. I think I started seeing the jobs pop up sometime in April or May, and I did the majority of my job hunting online initially. I used websites called NewJerseySchoolJobs.com, that's NJSchoolJobs.com, and then I used one called K12 JobSpot, and that's where I was seeing the ads. I pretty much applied for everything, even if I didn't think it was necessarily the best fit. I just applied for everything because the advice I was given in college was that teaching was a very competitive profession and you were lucky to get any job. So probably sent out at least 50 applications. The first interview I got was actually the first job I got. So I got called by a charter school in my state to come out and give a demo lesson. I believe it was for kindergarten. So I drove out to this charter school. I gave a kindergarten demo lesson. I think the lesson that I gave was on steady beat, just with the heartbeat. After that demo lesson, I went in for the interview process. The director seemed to like my demo lesson. They called her a director instead of a principal. And what was interesting is she said to me, I actually don't know much about music, but I have someone here who does. And she actually brought in one of the 4th grade students in the building. And believe it or not, the student interviewed me. The student asked me questions. I asked questions of the student. And I think it was a good way for her to gauge whether I would be a good fit with these students. It worked out pretty well for me, and I was offered the job on the spot. So that was awesome. I was in that school for 2 years, and believe it or not, my next interview, I also was interviewed by high school students. So it happens. Don't be surprised if you have students in your interview. So yeah. Number 7. Were there any common interview questions you remember? Yes, and they were not what I was told to be prepared for interviews. So a lot of the questions were things such as, what is your classroom management style? How are you going to incorporate technology into the classroom? One question I was not expecting, but I did get in more than one interview, was how I was going to incorporate writing into the classroom. Yes, in a music classroom, they wanted to know how I was going to incorporate writing. There were several districts that I interviewed for who wanted to know that I was going to put writing in my curriculum. So yeah, those are some of the common questions that you should be prepared for. Number 8, what was the first teaching position you were hired for? Okay, so I think I talked about this in question number 6. So the first teaching position I was hired for was at a charter school in my state, and I guess the official title was a general music teacher as well as a instrumental music teacher for the upper grades, but the position kind of gradually changed over time, so I'll explain it. So initially I was teaching grades K through 5 general music, as well as instrumental for grades 4 through 5. Yeah, that was my first year. And the position was only part-time. So I was doing full-time work for just part-time, but believe me, I was working full-time even though I was getting part-time pay, but it wound up being a really good experience. So going into the second year at this charter school, they actually got the license to become a middle school. So they were now expanding into middle school grades. So this is when my position became full-time, and I started teaching instrumental and general music going into middle school grades as well as the elementary school. Something else I started adding this year was I started teaching guitar, which was a little bit of a funny story. My director kind of told me one day, oh, I bought these guitars, and she bought them kind of on the spur of the moment without talking to anybody about it. And I did not know how to play guitar at the time, and I pretty much watched a lot of videos. I booked some lessons, and I learned how to play guitar so I could teach it to my 6th graders. So that was interesting. So I guess I was also teaching some guitar in there as well. Number 9, this is an interesting question. It's kind of a twofold question. It says, what did you feel prepared for on the very first day of your very first job? What did you feel unprepared for? Okay, so I felt prepared because I felt like I knew my content area, and I felt like I knew my teaching style. Even early on, I felt like I knew who I was as a teacher. The things I was not so prepared for were the transition process. So when I came into this charter school, the teacher who I was stepping in for and taking over for had a very different style than I did. He was very soft-spoken, very easygoing, very calm. And that's just not my style. I'm very go, 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 go. I'm very energetic. And that was a big change, especially for the older kids who had had this teacher since kindergarten and were getting me now in the 4th or 5th grade. So probably in hindsight, I should have been a little bit more patient with the process. And I remember being a little heartbroken probably the 1st or 2nd week of school, because I actually had a parent call me and tell me that their child was not enjoying my class, and it made me cry. It was really sad. And I think looking back, I probably could have dialed it back and not jumped in with just 2 feet and just taken a little bit easier on myself and on these students during the transition process, but that's looking back. Something else I wasn't so prepared for was communicating with families. And it was just mainly because I was nervous. I felt because I was young that maybe they wouldn't respect me. So I kind of had to figure out how to, I guess, communicate with families and be confident in myself as a teacher. So yeah, okay. All right, going on. This is the last question. Okay. Number 10. Do you have any last bit of advice for people who are on their journey to become a teacher? My advice is to be yourself, try new things, and remember, especially if you're a music teacher, that everybody is going to experience and engage in your class differently, and that's okay. Music is a different process for everybody, and not everybody's going to experience it the same way. Okay, so this was my How I Became a Teacher tag. I hope you enjoyed my first video. If you watched all to the end, thank you so much. I really would appreciate if you would like this video and subscribe. And thank you for being patient with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye.